Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're in HR or corporate counsel, you already know pre-employment screening is basically a high-wire act. But today, instead of just checking the boxes on basic compliance, we're going to dig into how the Integrity First assessment actually acts as a proactive legal shield, making your hiring process completely defensible in court.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the negligent hiring trap, what is Integrity First, the Supreme Court standard, navigating EEOC and ADA, evidence that protects employers, and finally, best practices for employers. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The negligent hiring trap.
Picture this scenario. An organization is placed on notice of a direct job-related risk, but goes ahead and hires the applicant anyway. If that employee later causes harm, whether to a customer, a coworker, or the company itself, when plaintiffs' attorneys get involved, their very first question is always going to be, did you know or should you have known that this individual posed a risk?
And that brings us to the magic word, foreseeability. In negligent hiring claims, liability almost entirely hinges on whether the harm was foreseeable. If an applicant takes an assessment, openly admits to high-risk behaviors, and gets an unqualified result, well, that result is your direct legal notice. You literally lose the ability to say you didn't know. If you hire them anyway and they commit an offense related to that exact risk, establishing foreseeability becomes incredibly easy for opposing counsel. They will absolutely build a case against you.
The U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board hit the nail on the head here, and their logic applies perfectly to integrity assessments. They point out that an assessment is structured, job-related data. It's not just a casual water-cooler opinion. Ignoring it is exactly like brushing past a screaming red flag reference check from a former boss. By ignoring an overt admission of risk on a structured assessment, you are essentially creating a documented liability file against your own company.
Section 2. What is Integrity First?
What's really fascinating here is the stark contrast. We are not talking about some fluffy personality profile or preference ranking. Integrity First is a binary risk screen. A qualified result simply means they met the standard. An unqualified result, that means the applicant provided direct admissions they are literally telling you that they have done, would do, or are totally willing to justify conduct that creates serious workplace risk. That gives you a clear, highly defensible reason not to hire them. So what are we actually screening for? The assessment focuses exclusively on overt, conduct-based risk areas. We're looking at theft and property risk, substance abuse, on-the-job impairment from alcohol or marijuana, hostility and aggression, and even a scale to catch faking or unrealistic self-presentation. These are not minor work-style quirks. These are overt behaviors that directly compromise safety, drive up workers' comp claims, and create the exact legal liabilities that companies end up spending millions defending in court.
All right, Section 3, the Supreme Court standard.
You know, a lot of people think federal employment law hates testing. Actually, it provides an incredibly clear roadmap for defensibility. Let's trace the timeline. Back in 1971, the U.S. Supreme Court decision Griggs v. Duke Power established that tests must be tied to the job. Then in 1975, Albemarle Paper Co. v. Moody said tests must be validated to the actual work performed. And looking at strict state levels, the 1997 California case Randy W. v. Muroc Joint Unified School District cemented the massive danger of foreseeable harm and creating a false sense of safety. Integrity First acts as your legal defense precisely because it aligns perfectly with these rulings. It's structurally validated and highly job-related.
Section 4. Navigating EEOC and ADA. When we look at regulatory alignment, the assessment acts as a strict legal shield. Let's break it down. The EEOC's core concern is discrimination and adverse impact, right? Well, the test aligns by being consistently applied and strictly tied to business necessity. The ADA targets illegal pre-offer medical exams. The test is entirely non-medical, focusing solely on conduct risk. And under incredibly strict frameworks like California law, the process remains totally fair because it purely looks at applicant responses about their own conduct, entirely ignoring any protected traits.
I want to zero in on the ADA for a second, because this is a total minefield for employers. To keep your legal armor completely intact under the ADA, the test explicitly does not ask if someone has a disability. It completely avoids asking for clinical diagnoses, medical treatments, or lawful medication use. By purely screening for overt workplace conduct risk and entirely avoiding mental disorders or medical history, it steers your hiring process safely away from the massive pitfalls of ADA pre-offer medical exam violations.
Section 5. Evidence that protects employers.
Look, if a court ever challenges whether your pre-employment test is truly a business necessity, you can't just wave your hands. You need hard proof. And the Cooper, Slaughter, and Gilliland study gives you exactly that. They studied Integrity First directly and concluded that using it was associated with lower workers' compensation claim rates, lower costs, and higher safety compliance. This is your documented, peer-reviewed proof that the test is fundamentally job-related. It backs up your legal defense with objective science.
To put that into perspective, let's look at a massive sample of over 11,000 staffing agency employees. Unscreened employees filed workers' comp claims at a rate of 3.8%. But the screened employees? They filed at a rate of just 2.1%. By simply implementing the screen, employees were 34% less likely to file a claim. That takes a legal theory and translates it into highly tangible business metrics.
And here is the so what of those numbers. That risk reduction created a staggering 866% return on investment for the staffing agency. 866%. It just proves that prioritizing legal defensibility and compliance doesn't just prevent lawsuits. It proactively stops the high-risk behaviors that drain company resources, keeping both your workforce safe and your bottom line totally protected.
But why does this work so well? Well, the research connects the dots for us. High theft risk scores directly correlate to malingering, meaning individuals who fake or exaggerate injuries for a payout. Meanwhile, high substance abuse scores predict a much higher injury risk because those individuals consistently display lower safety motivation. Basically, they break the rules and people get hurt. The defensibility of the assessment is absolutely airtight because admissions of risky behavior on the test directly connect to real-world harm on the floor.
Which brings us to Section 6, Best Practices for Employers. So how do we actually put this into practice without messing up the legal shield? Execution is literally everything here. Step 1. Apply the test consistently to all similarly situated applicants. You absolutely cannot cherry-pick who takes it. Step 2. Document your qualified/unqualified standard officially in your hiring policies. Step 3. Treat an unqualified result as disqualifying. If they admit to the risk, believe them. And Step 4. If you absolutely must make an exception, consult your legal counsel and meticulously document the business justification.
Guys, I cannot stress this enough. Your administrative language can absolutely save you or sink you in court. Never, ever use test results to slap a moral or diagnostic label on someone, like calling them a thief or an addict. Doing that invites immediate lawsuits and breaches compliance. Honestly, the most legally defensible language is just beautifully boring. Just say, the candidate did not meet the Integrity First assessment standard. Keep your documentation structured, keep it perfectly neutral, and keep it strictly focused on the test criteria.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take a hard, honest look at your current hiring protocols. Implementing a legally defensible screen like Integrity First ensures you are actively protecting your company, your employees, and your customers. I'll leave you with this one critical thought to chew on. Are you documenting your hires, or are you just documenting your liabilities?